but
yeah, Aaron never gives me any responsibility because he knows me. So
because I know you show up 20 minutes late to the most important interview we've ever had.
Oh gosh.
Okay, here we go. Rhyme or free, it doesn't matter to me. It's my bad poetry. Good day and welcome to My Bad Poetry, a podcast that normally has me sharing bad poetry from my high school journal, which has somehow evolved into a real show?
I don't understand how you're claiming a real show here, Aaron, because have you met us?
Fair enough. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, now, while we planned for this week to be a normal episode, an opportunity arose that we simply could not pass up. Jasper Fforde is a writer living in Wales with some of the wittiest words of our time, working in genres that are really hard to pin down. And somehow he has found himself talking to us.
I'm so sorry.
Dave, I don't know if we are experiencing a viral dream together or if he is an outlander in a well of lost podcasts. But whatever reality this is, Jasper, it is a joy and a privilege to have you on the show.
Well, thank you very much indeed. A pleasure to be here. I've never, ever discussed my poetry with anyone. So this is completely new to me.
We love to give you the opportunity. I mean, as someone who seems to love the craft of wordplay, I'm trying to recall there was a sentence in one of your Thursday Next books which was all compiled of one word. Was that? Do you remember working on that?
It might be the had.
Yes.
Had.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's quite fun. That.
Yeah.
Yeah, multiple words that kind of make sense is actually quite fun to play with, and they're quite good to try and sneak in because they're kind of jarring. But if you can put a flag over them, to say no, look, I'm actually trying to make these words work, because usually you can't do that. You can't say the next or there or are. It just doesn't work when you're writing. But I thought, well, why not? Let's have fun with it. Yeah, so it's the had. I think that's in maybe Well of Lost Plots or Lost in a Good Book, but I think is it 17 hads in a row?
It was impressive, and it had me laughing out loud when I encountered it. It was a work of wonder to put that many hads in a row.
Well, I mean, it's to be honest. I mean, that's it's not one of mine. I mean, that's been around for donkey's years. I mean, I was just running with it. So
sure.
Don't give me the credit, for goodness sake. But I sort of took the idea, ran with it, and just developed the idea. But I think that the had sentence has been around for a while.
Nice. As someone who appreciates words like you do, I imagine you've dabbled in poetry before.
Well, I mean, it's interesting actually, because I have, but it's really, I have what I think is called poetical aphasia, right? Okay. So, and what this means is, aphasia, you can't really read it, right? Yeah. So I can look at poetry on the page and it kind of doesn't really make any sense to me. Occasionally it does, but most of the time it doesn't. But if I hear someone say it, then I go, "Oh, that's good. I want me some of that." And then I mean, to take an obvious one, Ozymandias, King of Kings. When it's actually spoken, it's amazing. But when I read it, I go, "Oh, okay, something's gone there. Something's lost." So it's a weird one. So my poetry is really like sort of limericks plus, because that's kind of what I understand. A good limerick is like, I can get that. I can totally get that. Right. And some poems stuck in my head. Like there's I think it's Longfellow. There was one out of Psalm of Life, which I remember hearing, and I instantly had to put it to memory. Which I try and get this right. Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating funeral marches to the grave. And it was so brilliant when I heard it, and it was spoken by someone much better than me, I thought, yeah, I gotta put that one up there, because
Right.
it's the wonderful thing about poetry, and I could do the Raven as well at one point. I could do the whole Raven. It lasts about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I do actually have quite a few poems up there, and I've got a lot of really, really saucy limericks, which are completely unrepeatable in this family show. I mean, just awful. I mean, just absolute pure smut. Maybe for the R-rated.
Yeah, for the late night.
But not this one. So actually, I've got quite a lot up there, because poems are great because you can take them with you. And they're like having, you guys know this. It's like having your iPod, and your iPod runs out of batteries, and then you go, okay, well, let's just go back to the beginning and see if I can do the listeners and you start doing it, or listeners is a favorite one, and I could do that, and I think probably if I sat in the car and I was driving, it would take me about half an hour to get it all back.
Sure.
The listeners, Walter de la Mare, Walter de la Mare, like Longfellow, not considered, a great, massive thing in poetry, but for me it kind of works because I understand it on a sort of more, because of my aphasia. And it's the same with, a lot of poems like that I can sort of just recall, and that's actually a great deal of pleasure in that.
That's cool.
But when it comes to more really what people regard as proper poetry, which is, I think, meant to be the crack cocaine of the literary world, where it goes straight in and like squeezes the brain like that without touching the sides. That stuff I have a bit more trouble with, I must say.
That's fair. This is reminding me of a sketch from A Bit of Fry and Laurie, where Stephen Fry is interviewing Hugh about poetry that you can take on vacation. And it just, every time I think of it, it makes me giggle, because there's this beautiful moment of, do you have a short poem that anybody could memorize? And he pulls out a book and he just holds it and says, le. And it hangs there for like 10 seconds, and you just go, oh, that's it. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and I will not stop laughing. Oh. No.
Yeah. This is another good question, you see, because when I meet poets, because I meet poets here in Britain, it's like, what do you do? I'm sort of, whatever, and I'm a poet, and my question is, why are you not speaking in rhyme? and they go, well, all poems don't have to rhyme, and I go, no. But I expect you to rhyme like a little bit, because some poems rhyme like a little bit, or you're not speaking in sort of, pentamic iambic, or iambic pentameter. That's it. Iambic. Why aren't you speaking in iambic pentameter? And they get so annoyed when you say this, because the one thing that poets hate more than anything else is mocking them. So I try not to do that. But I mean, if they're small, and I can take them on, then go for it. But if they're kind of big and hulking, then I just generally sort of go, oh, really, a poet? That's marvelous, fantastic.
It's why we do this show over Zoom and not in person.
Yeah, we would get beat up by a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I think Nicole or Shiksha would just take us out if they were in person.
No, I think you're right.
Luckily, we bring them on to share their own bad poetry, and it's stuff that they admit is bad. So we get to make fun as much as we please. So
that's fair enough.
Well, we typically have Dave share one of his hastily put together weekly poems to bring us into the realm of poetry before our guest shares. So, Dave, did you write something to read for your favorite living author?
I did. I had so many different ideas. I wanted to do a play on the Lorem Ipsum, like Thursday's Child does. I wanted to make reference, and I never felt comfortable with anything that I had written. So this is a poem called Confidence. To be sure in oneself, to know whatever the outcome, you will be sufficient. To have within your mind, body, and soul assurance of your ability, to be unafraid as you write a poem for a literary genius who you respect and admire, aka something I greatly lack in this moment.
Well, what's wrong with that?
Besides the words and the cadence and not rhyming.
I would have. I think maybe you could have put in maybe staggering before the genius, perhaps.
Yes.
And after the genius, you could have said something like, whose name will probably live beyond eternity.
Yeah.
But, I mean, those are just small
well, and I forgot, like, as I was reading it, I was gonna genuflect and like do like all. I forgot to bow. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, no, that was pretty good. I mean, is that why do you guys call that bad poetry?
Well, because I wrote it, so
yeah. But I mean, I don't want to cause any trouble here.
Sure.
But I kind of think that any poetry becomes good when you write it, doesn't it? I mean, it's like there's no bad poetry, or there's no kind of, and I'm sure this, guys, is what the ironic sort of ironicness of bad poetry is that, of course, by its very creation, it is actually it has to be good because it's an expression, and expressions can only be positive. So, yeah. Well, genuinely, but generally,
yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, discuss.
Well, you've kind of hit on our general thesis of this project is even the worst poetry from high school is an expression of a context and an emotion at a time. Yeah. And so when we pick apart my utter hot garbage, we still find great conversation within. And I think that's the fun part, is the conversations that poetry tends to create. And so I think you're right. There is goodness in creation itself.
I don't think we could have gotten Aaron to admit to that unless you had said it.
So yeah, we're going to have to change the podcast title.
Yeah. I kind of have a similar way because, as an author, I will write. I mean, just today, literally, I deleted 2 chapters which became obsolete because I'd changed something else in the book, and they didn't need to be there anyway. But the saying I have is that even in the worst car wreck, there's always one usable bolt.
Wow.
And I think it's the same with poetry. Even in the worst poem, there's something, there's some concept, or there's some nub that you can build on or take forward or something like that. So there are bad poems and there is bad writing, but within it there is something. Even if it's not a word, maybe it's even the thought behind it, or what you were doing when you were writing it. There's got to be something,
Yeah, well, I think that is a great opportunity to bring us into a poem that you wrote, that you are willing to share with us, and you can give us the context and the meaning behind it after you share. But you have given us Double Trouble Twice as Nice from 1991.
Yeah, so I think my poetry is basically about I like sort of squeezing words in. So the idea of rhyming poetry appeals very, very positively to me, because I never grew up out of that, because it's actually saying, aha, it's like doing a crossword puzzle without any clues, and things have to rhyme and things like that. And if you can get the more rhymes you can fit in, the better. That must be more rhymes the better.
Correct.
So if in every line you can have a double rhyme, then that's got to be better than a single rhyme or no rhymes at all. So it's a very infantile way of looking at poetry, but it's my poetry writing sort of teaching kind of ended at age 7, I think, clearly. So that's where I am. But anyway, I put this together. This is in 1991, and I had to still do twin girls. And for anyone who had twins out there, and anyone who had twins first before any other children, or just first and then you kind of said, right, that's it, I'm done. This is kind of also for you, perhaps, and you might sort of ring a little chord here. But I was just mucking around, and I thought, why not I write a little poem about the The girls, and wouldn't that be cute, and twee and a little bit saccharine, and as it turned out, it is everything of those three. So anyway, here it is. It's called Double Trouble, Twice as Nice, from 1991, and the girls were 3 at the time, and they're now 33. So time does march on. Anyway, here it is. Double Trouble, Twice as Nice. Remember that rhyme about sugar and spice. Sometimes sweet and sometimes sour. They test you daily to gauge your power. Moods that swing from pole to pole, sometimes crying and sometimes droll, like 2 magnets, interactive, sometimes repel and sometimes attractive. Screams of joy, screams of mine, follow close on in record time. Hugs and kisses and handfuls of hair, parenthood begins to wear. But then they climb upon your lap, curl in a ball and have a nap, give you presents, help you fly the kite, ask you to kiss their rabbit goodnight. The highs are higher than the lows are low, and it's this what makes you love them so. You'd help them out, getting all emotional. You'd help them out at any price. Double trouble, twice as nice. And I haven't read that. I did get a little bit choked, didn't I? I haven't read that for like 30 years. So that's quite interesting. I think that reads a lot better than I thought it would.
Yeah.
Because we have a down ending first act, and then it all kind of pulls together at the end. You know, it's like, oh my God, these children are like the worst thing on ever. And then it's no, hang on, and some nice to salty and saccharine, but there you go. What do you think, guys?
It's unfair because I just read my piece of crap, and then you have this, and it's actually really cute.
Yeah, it's
quite cute.
It's hard for us to do our normal lean in and just tear it to pieces because you actually were brought to a bit of tears in your reading, so it would feel almost
no, you can do what you want.
Insensitive.
You can do what you want. Listen, I cry if I'll burst into tears as the wind changes. So, I just, get kind of emotional. But it's, anyway, so you can, there's a few bits of wreckage in there that works quite well.
I think so.
Like 2 magnets interactive. I mean, that's quite nice, isn't it? Because it actually scans quite nicely as a line. I thought that's quite a good line. Yeah. But I'm trying to find another one. I can't really.
I'm curious. My biggest vice in writing, primarily in sermons, but my biggest vice is alliteration. I go to alliteration left and right every other sentence. I see some in here. I'm wondering if that was intentional or if that was just like sometimes sweet, sometimes sour. But I guess you're quoting something else at that point. But hugs and kisses, handfuls of hair.
Right.
Do you know, is alliteration something you turn to often?
Yeah, it does. And I think, looking at this there's lots and lots of repetitive words. And I think that makes sense from when you're and certainly this is a prose writer actually having a go with poetry, or not poetry, but rhyming stuff.
Yeah.
But when you sometimes sweet, sometimes sour, you've got sometimes you've got the alliteration. And then you got pole to pole, sometimes crying, sometimes droll, sometimes repel. Screams. There's lots of repetitive words, which I think are quite nice, because then it just flips depending on what you're which way you're using it. So alliteration, I've always tried to use that, and always tried to make lines kind of dance a little bit. So all those little tools do help, I must say.
So I have to ask, because this is the most important question of our generation.
Debate, yes.
I maintain alliteration requires 3 iterations of the same sound. Aaron, who is wrong, says it only requires 2. Who do you agree with, and why is it me?
Well, put it this way: to lose. What do they say? To lose one parent, is a misfortune. To lose 2 looks very much like carelessness. I think 2 could be a chance. 2 could just be an accident. It's like you do two words together, and they both got they both sound the same. It just could be a fluke. you know.
Mhm.
But once you've done 3, it's like, this is no fluke. This is obviously intentional.
Right.
So, you know, it's like, you know, I suppose serial killers, you know, you kill 2 people and you go, is he a serial killer? I don't know. And then you kill 3. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So I think, you know, you're just not sure until, you know, 2 of something. It just could be a fluke, you know. But when you got 3, it's like, no, that's you're actually trying to do something there. Rules of 3 are good as well, because you know about the rules of 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, so rules of 3 are everywhere. So if there's an answer that has, should you go with 2 or should you go with 3 in it, I'd go with 3.
Oh, 3.
Rules of 3. I mean, 3 bears, you know, 3 everything.
Right.
When you're writing, you go, you know, you'd go funny, funnier, then funniest. You know, 3-act play. I mean, the rules of 3s are everywhere.
Now,
So
this is
I'd
the
just
person who wrote a Last Dragonslayer trilogy, adding a 4th. And the 3rd bear is actually the 4th bear.
Yeah, but you can. I mean, everything. I mean, I just couldn't finish the series. I mean, that's why I had to go for a 4th in the trilogy. It would have made more sense as a trilogy, and less painless on my readers, I suppose. But I don't know. I just felt it was 4, and adding a fourth to the 3 bears did make sense, actually.
That did, yeah.
And you're not expecting
that. No, right. Except when you put it in the title, you know.
Yeah, when I put it in the title, that is a bit of a giveaway. I was going to call the 4th bear Camon.
Camembert.
Oh.
Yeah, there's always like a 10-second pause then when I say that joke, but I didn't. You know,
well, that's how you what cheese coaxes a bear out of a cave, right?
Is that Camembert?
Camembert.
Yeah, absolutely. Camembert. Yeah, that totally makes sense. You know,
it's a quality joke.
Yeah, real. Yeah.
To bring it back, before Dave jumped on, I was telling you how we were experiencing the worst tantrum of our daughter's lives today, and she is in fact 3, much like, so I can sympathize with the father who is writing this in the moment. And I cannot imagine what 2 would be like. So when you took that turn and got a little choked up, I have to say my headspace is not at that turn yet, but I appreciate the fact that it's there, that it will come.
Yeah, no, it will come. And you know, it's not. I'm not getting choked up at the words. I'm getting choked up at the whole father thing.
Exactly.
You know? Because you know, children, they're just. I mean, children are both absolutely hideous and just wonderful, you know, all at the same time. and it's like, oh my god, you know, what am I doing this? And then of course and things change, and it's like, you know, Dad, you know, love you, you know, huge, you know, hug around your neck, and you know, and they're hanging on your foot, you know, and you walk around with them sitting on your foot, you know. We've all done that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're just the most fabulous thing ever. You know, they get better and better. You know, they're terrific, and they get older and they're wonderful as well. So you know.
While we have you, you talk about your writing style is a narrative dare, and you never know where you're going, and yet so often there are all these breadcrumbs. Do you find that you're writing yourself into a conclusion with the breadcrumbs that you're just dropping in? Does that make any sense?
What breadcrumbs in the book or between series?
Oh gosh. I mean, like, you have like running gags, which will end up being a key aspect. I'm thinking, oh gosh, there's those little moments in the Thursday Next with like the piano falling and like those little like sentences, which are just like in the moment and then they're gone. And then you get to the end and you find out that it's been this whole kind of conspiracy of things.
Right, the cascade.
Yeah. Well, there's a little trick here, you see, is that when I'm writing, and this is going to be a huge reveal to anyone who isn't a writer, huge reveal. So really lifting the curtain here. When you write a book, right, you don't just start writing and then carry on writing until you get to the end.
What?
You can actually, yeah, I know it's weird, but hey, this crazy stuff. But do you know what? If we have a good idea, we can just go back and just pop it in every 20 pages.
Oh,
Because we want people to go, hang on, there's something about pianos here. And I just literally, I will go back and go, where can I drop in a comment about pianos or whatever it is? And it's a subtle, dark art, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to introduce an idea that's relevant, but you don't want to make too much of it, but you have to keep it alive in people's heads. So if there's something that's vital that needs to be there on page 400, I can't just do it on page 7 and then never mention it again. It's got to be on 7, it's got to be on 92, it's got to be 208, and it's got to be on 305.
Right.
And it keeps it alive and it keeps it going, and then people go, oh right, of course, yeah, that's what's been going on. So quite often I'll have ideas, right at the end of a book that changes the book totally, completely and utterly, and I'll just go back to the manuscript and I'll go, right, I've just got to put this in here, feather it over, make it work, make it seamless. And that's often what I do. And the error fare is like it's got about 7 subplots running, and they all just pop up at regular intervals. Right. And at the end of the error fare, it's like you're just sort of walking down this escarpment and just stumbling over all these subplots that I sort of tie up loosely right at the end. In the error fare, there could be many different plots. Is it about trying to stop the war in Crimea? Is it about Jane Eyre? Is it about a love affair? Is it about getting back together with Landon? Who knows? But there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is you edit your work. Unlike some poets that I know, like let's say Aaron, who just never edits his work, and there we find beautiful spelling mistakes and grammar that doesn't make any sense. Just throwing it out there in general.
You're knocking down a high schooler who never intended the work to be seen.
Shame on you.
This is what I'm here for. I'm here to be judgmental.
Fair enough.
I think that's fair enough.
It's my one skill.
I actually did what I did. I mean, this is another interesting. It's a poem that isn't mine. Hang on, I'm just trying to find it. Here it is. No, I've got it. Right. So what this is early spell checkers. Right. Early spell checkers weren't very good. Right. No surprises there. They weren't very good. So I thought it'd be rather fun to run Jabberwocky, right, by Lewis Carroll, which has a lot of nonsense words in it, through a spell checker. And I did this in 1994, right? So spell checkers not good, not good at all. So you end up with something quite exciting. And this is how it goes. Was broiled, and the slushy loves did gore and gamble in the wage. All mimes were the operatives, and the cum paths outcrop. Right, but then it gets better, right? I mean, that's fairly ordinary stuff. It gets better. Beware the no suitable corrections, my son. That's actually what it said. So instead of beware the Jabberwock, my son, it couldn't find anything remotely resembling Jabberwock. So it just popped up no suitable corrections. I went, yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So beware the no suitable corrections, my son. So it's quite fun. I'll pop that in your. Hang on.
Yes, please.
I'll pop that in the Google Doc as well, just for a bit of fun. There we go.
That's awesome.
Yeah, 1994 spell checker Jabberwock. Yeah,
that's amazing.
And hadst thou slain the no suitable corrections? Yeah, no. Anyway, that's not that. But you can see with my sort of experimental kind of how my mind kind of works. And maybe if I did actually do proper poetry, it might be sort of adequate. After 10 years. I don't know. I was reading. So I read some poetry the other day. 5-10 years ago. And what it's quite interesting. Someone had just recorded people's conversations on the bus, and they'd just laid them out as a poem, and it actually sounded really good. And it's like, I think we all speak in poetry kind of all the time.
That's the beauty of humanity, that there's that creativity and joy in it.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, another point is I do talks at school sometimes, and I'm talking about careers in writing. because I don't think schools actually promote careers in writing nearly enough. And there are many careers in creative writing. And and I say to kids, who here likes poetry? And if there's like 30 of them, there's always one or two who go, oh, I do. But no one else. And everyone goes, oh, poetry is like rubbish. And I go, okay, well, who likes listening to songs? And everyone puts their hand up. And I say, and do you like the words in the songs? And they go, oh, yeah, they're really good. They, sometimes they really mean things. And I go, okay, it's poetry to music.
Right.
So you actually all do like poetry after all, don't you? And then they all kind of go, yeah, I guess.
Right.
So poetry is, we think of poetry as a niche, as a niche sort of enjoyment thing. But actually, what we're really talking about is we're talking about musicless songs rather than poetry.
Yeah.
No, poetry is only Shakespeare and only Edgar Allan Poe, and that is it. No one has ever written any other poetry other than those two.
Yeah. So you could put the sonnets were probably to music. So and I would have thought it probably sounded fantastic on a lute to a tune now lost. Although I think the Raven, to probably a bass, maybe a single double bass, and something like that. So
man. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, but you did give us a glimpse of another poem you wrote in 1994. That seemed like a much longer one, so you don't have to share the entirety of that. But what you did share seemed to have some interesting backstory. So if you have the time, would you be willing to give us a stanza of that and some explanation?
Yeah, so this was I used to work in the film industry, and in 1994 I was doing a movie called The Trial, the Kafka novel. And it was with the Kafka novel, The Trial, and Joseph K. It was made by Orson Welles back in the 60s, but we made it with Carl McLaughlin, who you will know more recently from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Portlandia, where he plays the mayor.
That's right.
And he was super famous in 1994 for being Agent Cooper, I think it was, in Twin Peaks, the original Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
So he was like a hot property, and we had him, and he was great. And it was like every single famous British actor of that time was featuring in it. So just a galaxy of stars. It was great. We even had Anthony Hopkins, and he was fresh from Silence of the Lambs. So he was playing a priest, and he played the priest like Hannibal Lecter. I don't know, well, why not?
Well, it worked for once.
So we were in Prague for I think 9 weeks or something, 9 or 10 weeks shooting this film, and Prague's a lovely place. And in 94 it was probably a little lovelier because it was, well, lovelier for us, not for the people living there. It was less billboards, less. Nowadays, it's very much a tourist mecca, and it's back in '94. It was still kind of just a little bit raw and coming out of the Eastern Bloc and the Iron Curtain. So it was kind of exciting and unusual and lovely in a very beautiful city, yet not spoiled by tourism, or overexploited or anyway.
Yeah.
So whilst we were on it, I started writing a poem about things that happened on the shoot. So I ended up with a 67 verse poem, which is without context. Some of it is quite difficult to understand, but it was full of little sort of digressions and little sort of stories here and there and sort of silliness. But it also goes with a sort of strange verse form. Is again going back to these, let's make as many rhymes as possible. So a typical and slightly rude reference to muesli. I can tell you the one about muesli is hang on. So muesli is a platter of mixed vegetable matter, a triumph of Swiss peasant cuisine. To rolled oats in a pan, add nuts, raisins, and bran. It'll make number twos quite routine.
Beautiful.
So it's a fantastic piece of poetical art. But you can see the verse form has the double double meaning all the time. Anyway, so it just goes through from that, and it's about the film, it's about the characters on the crew, it's about the actors, it's about the longest speech because it was full of long speeches, and all kinds of things. We had Harold Pinter on set at one point, and he was great friends with Vavel, who was the Czech president at the time. So they used to come on set and used to sort of give each other hugs and stuff. So it was kind of wild, really.
Yeah.
But I did these digressions. I did Prague digressions where I was trying to do a kind of punchy description of Prague, right? So
Okay.
should I do one of those?
Sure.
I did 3 in all, but I'll do one of those. Cobbles, Skodas, many stairs, regular trams with regular fares, tourist crowd, shutters click, Kodak shares rise up quick, tons of taxi, beers in litres, Trabants and no parking meters, Russian watches, Brezhnev hats, muzzled dogs and very few cats. It goes on. Spires, churches, hotel, forum, that was where we were staying. Vertical coffin with no decorum, surly waiter, no reply, Van Gogh's masterful green rye. See Traviata in the Smetna Hall, home by metro, fare quite small, opera seats for £1.20, madam to house half empty.
Wow, you really do. I mean, you paint a picture.
Do you want a third one? I'll give you a third one.
By all means.
Bekarovka. Okay. Bekarovka, which actually was one of the beers, right? Bekarovka, painted egg, Jethro Tull on one leg, instant Vitus, priceless gems, saw Canaletto's, view of Thames. Most nights down at Lafka, T-shirts of Franz Kafka, Jewish quarter, buying crystals, taxi drivers packing pistols.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
When did Madonna's Vogue come out?
That's a very interesting point. It does sound a bit like
it has that rhythm.
If only there were a series of databases collected by a telephonic communication system, we could find this out really simply.
If you could invent that,
if only someone would invent that. Madonna Vogue. I'm going to look it up. It does sound like it, although. Yeah, song by Madonna. Here we are. Let's go. There must be a Wikipedia. It was 1990.
Oh, so you were four years behind on the.
So I was 4 years behind.
Yeah.
Although I think I was more from the Clash. I'm trying to remember the song from the Clash where he keeps on just going dang, 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 bang with all these like bullet pointed things that all sort of connected in that way. I should have done my homework, but yeah, that was it does kind of yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, or was it The Cure? Maybe it was The Cure. Getting my Cure and Clash mixed up. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, well, now I know what I'm doing with my afternoon. I'm gonna record your poem, but set to Vogue, or I'll look for some Clash songs and see.
Yeah, some Vogue. Jimmy Dean, something of the beauty queen. Dance on Fred Astaire, Dance on Air.
Yeah.
Come on, guys, fill in for me. We must be able to get it.
We'll do the whole thing.
Marlo, Grace Kelly, Harlow Jean, Picture of a Beauty Queen. Oh, come on, you guys! You should know this. You're far younger than that.
Ask your twin daughters if they know all the words to Vogue, because we are 1 year younger than them.
No, not a chance. Not a chance. I know. It's my era, like 80s, 90s. I know.
Yeah. I do still love your pop culture references that you lace throughout your books.
I mean, I have this kind of theory that pop culture has a shelf life. Some last forever. So Elvis, Marilyn Monroe, they're there for good, right? Other ones, which are on the kind of C list, the endangered, right? So they're like basically animals, right? There are ones that are not endangered at all, like which is obviously Elvis, Madonna. Then you get sort of more endangered, and then you get on the critical list. And endangered is kind of things like Bonanza. That's certainly endangered as a pop culture reference.
Yes, it is.
I think Carmen Miranda is on the critically endangered list. Yeah, you see, and this is because this is a reference to Early Riser that you've just read, and what we have to do as authors is whenever you reference a pop culture reference which is slightly on the endangered list or on the critical list, then you're just giving it a little new lease of life, because somebody will read Early Riser and go, sorry, what is this about Carmen Miranda and the fruit hat? And they will go on YouTube and they go, oh my God, that's like the best thing I've ever seen in my life. And I will not be able to think of a bowl of fruit without thinking of Carmen Miranda doing Archikiboo, Archikiboo, Archikiboo. And then you go, oh my God, that's just like, I remember that was in The Mask with Jim Carrey. He did the Cuban Pete. Yeah. And that's kind of, and he wears all that stuff, and you go, oh my God, that's where it's from, and I can connect the dots now and understand the world in a much better way. And so there's, I think, a great responsibility within fantasy writers to bring back, and promote pop culture references, and I'm trying with Bonanza, which is much harder than, because you could argue, do we really need Bonanza in our pop culture reference? Maybe not.
I do have to say, while reading Early Riser, the Carmen Miranda scene when she is rediscovered and you just hear boom, chicky, boom, boom. I set my book down and my wife was worried about me because I was laughing so hard. It was just like that perfect moment of like, that was 150% out of left field, and I loved every minute of that.
Good. Good. Well, I mean, now figure this. Right, is that originally Carmen Miranda was Rick Astley. Yeah, I wanted more of The Sound of Music as well, Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Oh yeah.
But again, I couldn't use that. So and I was trying to use the lines from Whiskers on Kittens and whatever it was, Snowflakes on. I wanted to use the Snowflakes line from that. Couldn't do it. Yeah, so I had to do something else. So it's because of I couldn't use Rick Astley that I used Carmen Miranda.
Well, without that, the book was just terrible, right? Like I didn't enjoy it at all.
Lots of Carmen Miranda.
That's one of my favorite parts from that book. But yeah.
Well, I don't want to wrap this up, but again, this has been just very exciting to have you on to share some of your attempts at poetry. Maybe stick with the novels.
I think I will. I think I know that.
That's fair. I think after 16 novels, you figured it out. But we don't need to tell you that. But we don't want to keep you any longer from the real work and life that you have ahead of you. But this has been a complete moonshot of a moment for us as fans of your work. So thank you for sharing your time.
No, my pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and my sister Sonia would be extremely frustrated with me if I didn't give her that name check. So Sonia, this episode is dedicated to you. Without you, we would have never had this episode.
There you go. Yeah, thank you, Sonia. Yeah.
But before you leave, here at My Bad Poetry, we end each week with the words of a true poet. So I'm going to leave that for you to interpret how you want to leave it. We've had our guests read poetry that they are proud of, that they've had published. I know that you technically are a published poet because of characters who have had poetry in your books. But whatever poem you want to end our time with today, I'll leave it for you.
Okay, so this is a sonnet written in 1941 by a pilot. I think it was Canadian pilot called John Gillespie Magee, and he was flying over South Wales where I live, and he used to go up flying and he used to write the poetry while he was flying, just jot down things and then come down and write poems, write sonnets to flying. Now, the interesting thing about flying, you see, is because I'm a pilot, and it's very difficult to write about something that is so slightly sort of, esoteric and nebulous. It's like trying to explain to someone why surfing is really good, right? Give me a poem about surfing that says it all in 70 words, and it's like, oh, well, generally surfers aren't kind of poets in that kind of way. Sure. So you've got these two different roles that you've got to try and equate, and writing about aviation and flying and what it really means is very, very difficult. Ernest F. Gann is probably one of the best aviation writers, and when you read his stuff, he's an aviator. It's very difficult to kind of explain, and I think there's a lot of things like that which are very, very difficult to explain what they're like. Anyway, so he wrote this sonnet to flight, which was called High Flight, although I don't think it actually had a title. And the sonnet was found amongst his personal effects because he died when he collided with another aircraft whilst on active duty in the UK. So, and he was only, what was he? He must be only about 20 when he died. So the world was robbed of a major talent. But anyway, but this is it. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the sky on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-spit clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark or even eagle flew. And while with silent, lifting mind, I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.
That is beautiful.
I love it.
Yeah. Interestingly, I mean, Ronald Reagan spoke from that when he was eulogizing the people who lost on the Challenger.
Oh, that's where I've heard that line. Okay.
Yeah. And it's scraps of it are used here and there, but that's the full sonnet. But for me, when you talk about footless halls of air, so that is exactly, you fly between two clouds, and that is a footless hall of air, and there's no better description. And there will be no better poetry about aviation, I don't think. Top the windswept heights with easy grace. It's just a fabulous piece. High, untrespassed sanctity of space.
Well, yeah. Thank you for choosing that and ending with some good poetry for today. This has been My Bad Poetry.
Now go write some of your own bad poetry.
That's a wrap.
Thank you so much. This has been so amazing.
Good. Well, I hope you edit something, the one usable bolt out of the car wreck.
The one usable bolt.
Do you want to just finish off? Do you want a good Lutheran story?
Yes.
Okay.
Love one.
Okay. So.
Rhyme free doesn't matter.